Hi, everyone. Welcome to Tuesdays at 2. I'm here with Brenda Rogerson. I'm Janet Prey, and this is Islander Sewing Systems. So, hope everyone has started their summer out well. Now that June is already over, I can't believe it. I'm sure many of you feel the same way. Woo! And of course, it's hot and humid in Michigan this time of year. Lots of rain and lots of heat. But the garden's growing well, so we're all content, I think. So, today, on Tuesdays at 2, we want to talk about all things slopers. So we've been really working, and if you're a regular follower, you know I am really pushing the sloper idea. That sloper is the best way to sew. It's the best way to know that the garment's going to fit you every time you sew. And it's so much more relaxing and enjoyable to sew once you've mastered the sloper. And the sloper isn't difficult compared to a lot of things that you've mastered in your sewing. The sloper is not difficult. If you're new to sewing, sloper might be slightly more challenging, but that's what we're here for. We're here to help you with that. So along those lines, uh, last year I rewrote the sloper for knits. So the knit bodice sloper, the perfect knit t-shirt it's called. That sloper we redid last year. This year we have just finished doing the princess seam slopers. So 1301 and 1302, which are the slopers that people will be using in the upcoming sloper class on Zoom. That's a 5-week class and it starts in August. And you can read more about it in the newsletter. But anyway, we will be teaching that class, and you could do O1 or O2, either one. The shoulder princess seam, which I highly recommend if you have a larger bust. So if you're above a double D, or even if you're anybody can use the shoulder. I love the shoulder, but specifically if you're above that D, double D range, really seriously consider the shoulder. Some of you may also want the princess eventually or right away. If you are an AB cup, the princess is really lovely on and easy to fit. But either one will fit your bust. I'm just saying that I think what we find it's easier to fit a larger bust because that shoulder seam goes right over the bust. The armscye comes in at an angle. So in order to sculpt the in, the out, and the around of it all, that's what the shoulder one does the best. But either one of those are appropriate for the class. So if you are considering or have already purchased to take the class in August, you will need that pattern, either 13.1 or 13.02. We also have kits. So the kit includes the pattern, the brand new guide. The pattern's the same, the guide's new, and 3 yards or 2 yards of muslin for the smaller sizes, 3 for the plus sizes, and also 3 yards of dotted pattern paper, so that you've got everything you need to make your first attempt at a sloper. Let's see. So I told you I rewrote these. So if you have the older version guides of 1301 or 1302, they're both pink, but they will look very different from these because these have the Islander Sewing Systems logos at the top. The others were fashion patterns because we acquired the fashion pattern intellectual property, which included the sloper patterns. But we felt because we want to do these classes, we really wanted to enhance that guide. And especially for those who can't take the class, you could do it on your own with the new guide because it does have a lot of detail to it. Although it's a lot of fun to take a class and get all your questions answered right away. So there's that. So let's talk about when you want to make a sloper. And you say the first thing is to choose the pattern. One thing I want to encourage you is to not think about the sloper pattern like any other pattern. So all you need to do is get as close to the size of your body as possible. Because what we're going to do is we're going to take that and we're going to pin fit it to your body. So it doesn't matter if it's 2 sizes too big. If it's 2 sizes too small, we can't do that. But if you get as close to your full bust measurement in the size that you choose, the rest of it can be sculpted away or added to. So let's say that you look at the pattern and there's a size that fits you in the bust, but it won't fit you in the hip. Then you're going to choose the bust size and cut all of this out up here. But then when you get down to the waist area or wherever you start to be larger than the pattern, and then you're just going to grade it out to the next size because they're stacked. So the next size is right there. So if you say, all right, I'm making a 12, but I need a 16 hip, you're just going to slide your way out to that 16. And it doesn't have to be particularly accurate or perfect like you do when you cut out a garment you're going to sew. Because when we cut out a garment we're going to sew, we want to be very accurate because that's our seam allowance from that raw edge in. And it matches to other pattern pieces. So if we're not accurate in our cutting, we can't be accurate in our construction. But with a sloper pattern, we're not constructing it. We're going to pin fit it and we're going to create a new pattern from it. And that's the pattern we're going to construct. Okay. I know that a lot of people have written me and said they're baffled about slopers. Maybe they've been sewing for many years and they never heard of it, or they've heard of it, but they don't know what to do with it. And then I have several people have written me and said they've actually taken a class and made it, but they still don't know what to do with it. So that's what our class is going to be all about, is actually showing you how to use the sloper after we get the sloper constructed for you. So it's a 5-week class and we should be able to accomplish all of that pretty easily. So just think of this as a template, not as a pattern. And then the next thing I want you to do is put it on the muslin and cut it out. Do not do any of your regular adjustments that you do to a pattern. Maybe you do a full bust adjustment. Maybe you, whatever it is that you normally do, leave it alone. Don't do any adjustments. I kind of get nuts because I'll have someone and I'm trying to help them and they send me some pictures. And I said, well, what happened here? Oh, well, I made my usual upper bust adjustment or whatever they did, which skewed the whole thing. So it kind of, I feel a little bit like Mommy Dearest. No alterations, no wire hangers. That's how I feel about it. So don't change that pattern. Now, if you are a very tall person, maybe you want to add a little length to it, but it really isn't necessary because all we're trying to do is be a sculptor and figure out the sculpting of your upper body. How your shoulders are straight, or one's a little bit shorter than the other, or one's a little bit higher than the other. That's usually the case. And then you know some of your fitting issues. We all have them. Some people have what they call swimmer's back. They have really pronounced shoulder blades in the back because of what maybe they do. Maybe they were a swimmer at one time or some other physical activity. And that changes the way a garment hangs on your body. And usually the ready to wear just isn't going to hang on that body very well. So, anyways, you may find some of the issues you didn't even know you had, but once you find them as you're making your sloper, you recognize, oh yeah, every shirt I make always seems to be a little bit over to one side, a little bit over. Well, turns out one of your shoulders is shorter or at a different angle. And once you adjust that in the pattern, now the garment will hang straight on you. Okay, so no alterations. It's a step-by-step instructions, and if you approach it that way, as if it was, do you remember when you were a kid, you did a dot to dot. You didn't know what the picture was, but you knew that you connected 1 to 2 and 2 to 3, and you just followed that. That's what I'm asking you to do with the sloper. Don't overthink it. Just follow it step by step. Now there are a couple of alteration techniques that could come into play, but I don't want you to do them right away because they seldom come into play with a princess seam because we have so many pieces to adjust. But if you have a high rounded back, there might be some issues. And there's a couple of different ways to address it. So that's why I don't want you to address it ahead of time. You might find something new that you like. Um, the other thing, let's see where I was thinking. Oh, and then hollow chest. Some people have very hollow chest, and you'll end up with a garment where there's like extra fabric right here. There's a special alteration for that if we need it. But we have princess seams that should take care of that because in this princess seam, you should be able to take that right out. So it won't be a problem. Same thing with upper bust. You can adjust the upper bust, adjust the full bust, and under the bust. Everything's adjustable because of all those seams. Okay, so let me see where are we at? Okay, so one of the things I thought would be fun is to just talk about to help those who are right now in the process trying to make a sloper. And some things get a little confusing. And I think because it's a new process, oftentimes they've got the book, the directions tell you what to do. And what they tell you to do is to do this. You sew, no sleeve. You only sew, and you're only basting, excuse me. You do it so that it's wrong side out or wrong sides together, not right sides together. So that's the first mistake people make because you're so used to putting it right side together. I've done it. I just sit down and I'm talking to somebody and I sort of, oh, I fell into my old habits of putting things right sides together. So that's an important thing to remember. Wrong sides together. And then only machine based. Do not stitch it. I will have people write me and send me a picture and say, can you help me with my sloper? And they have completely sewn it up. They've completely, like with the knit one, they've completely sewn it up, put the sleeves in, sewn it wrong, right sides together as a t-shirt. Well, I can't help them then because we have to have it with the wrong sides together so that we can identify where we need to change it. I can't identify it as easily or anywhere near accurate if the garment's already made. And aren't we tired of trying to fix garments that we already made or that somebody else already made or that we purchased? It gets frustrating. So that's the first thing. And you might, just like have to keep reminding yourself of that. Another mistake that's often made is they skip the part that I explained to draw the stitching line on the arm size and the neckline. Just a dashed. These are 5/8 in our sloper patterns, and I believe this is 3/8 up here. But it'll say in the pattern. But you want to just dash those front and back. And then I want the center front line on both fronts and the center front line on the back. The center front line on the fronts is so that we know that it's going to fit you, and those two lines have to match up. Okay? So this is what you want to prepare. This is where you will start. It's machine basted with a large basting stitch because you're going to pull them all out. Now, the other thing that people will forget to do is fit in order. You cannot fit out of order and have it come out well. You'll frustrate yourself. So remember to follow the directions in the guide. You want to go step by step and not out of order. So the first thing we're going to do is take out one shoulder seam. And that's what we're going to fit, the shoulder. Make sure that it is fitting. Then the left shoulder. Then I don't care which side. I don't care which shoulder you start with, and I don't care which side seam you start with, but it's one at a time. So we're going to fit the shoulders, fit the shoulders. Oh, they look great. Then we're going to come down here and start pin fitting the side seam. We pin fit that side seam, and all of a sudden we realize there's a wrinkle up here that wasn't there before. Then we're going to smooth that wrinkle out and repin that shoulder seam. But if we had stitched that thinking we were done, you're not done stitching. So don't stitch. Once you pin something, you're not stitching it again. Remember that. Once you've pinned it, you're not stitching again. We're pin fitting, pin fitting, pin fitting, and then reconnecting to where we started from. Okay. One of the other habits that we have, which is a good habit, like I talked about when you cut out a garment, I think we're having some technical difficulties. What is
You're
it?
going out of focus like all the time, and they're couple.
All right,
I can't.
let's stop
Okay.
and let's check that menu.
Are we
So
gonna kick
if
them
we,
off?
since this is going so goofy, if you will just get a cup of coffee, take a break, we'll be right back and we'll fix this. Because okay, we think we're back. Okay. So do you have questions there?
Yes,
And do I need to repeat anything that they couldn't see when it was acting up?
Okay, so let's see. There was a question very early on. How do you correctly measure for the cup size? Do you use the Dart Sloper 1201 for wired for style? Shopping online is great except when you have to match color examples, buttons, threads, trims. Any suggestions for this?
So there's a question about cup size. Well, check your bra. That's what we're asking. What is the cup size of your bra? That's all we need to know. There is a formula, and you can look it up online. I would tell it to you, except for I'm afraid I haven't used it in a long time. I might quote it wrong, but you measure around your rib cage under your bust, and then you measure your bust, and for every inch difference, it changes your cup size. But I don't know if it's every inch is a cup size or every 2 inches. I'm not sure, but I know it's easy to find online. But that's how you find your cup size if you're not sure that your bra is accurate. But same cup size for garments as it is for bras.
She's asking, did you use the 1201 for your wired for style,
No, I didn't. Well, yes, I started with 1201, but I have several iterations of my sloper now. And I think I showed you. Hey, Brenda, could you hand me that purple folder right there? So once I make a sloper, you leave your sloper pristine. I will harp on that till the cows come home. But I have had to create a folder. I used to have an envelope with all my slopers in it. But I have a princess seam sloper. Well, once I've changed my sloper to have a princess seam, I might want to make that garment again. So I hang on to that and I call that my princess seams or my
Sorry, I know.
I call that my kimono sleeve sloper, and so on. So I have several slopers, but this was started from a basic shirt sloper.
Can you go over one more time? How do you know if you have the older guide?
How do you know if you have the older guide? Well, this is a question that just came in. These are the pictures on the newer guide. Certainly, if you have 1301 and it's got pink pictures on it, it's not the right one. So, and you'll see the Islander logo. So if your guide has the Islander logo on it, it's a new one.
Okay, I think there's one more question.
Okay, we have one more question before we get going. And give us a thumbs up if you think that we've corrected that issue from before.
Somebody is commenting that they love your blouse, especially the sleeves. I don't know.
Oh, someone has
She's
complimented my Wired for Style. I hope she knows that she can make one too. I actually even have this fabric still. We have a little bit of this left, but it's called Wired for Style. And we took a sloper and we showed you how to create this type of collar. And we added the collar shaper. It's a little piece of covered wire that bends in either direction. It's fabulous. And And so the kit comes with the buttons and the collar and shaper and the interfacing. And then the class shows you how to make all those changes. And the beauty of that is now you have more skills. Now, the next time you see a garment and you go, well, wait a minute, I can take my sloper and all I have to do is redraft the collar, change the shape of the collar. I might even be able to use a collar and a pattern I already have. But what it does is it starts to give you that confidence. You get a little education on how to pattern make. You don't have to become a pattern drafter, but it is important to understand patterns in order to sew well and to sew less frustrated. Okay.
More,
Anything else?
yes, quite a few.
Okay, we got lots of questions and we'll take them all.
Can the 1301 and 1302s be can can 1301 and 1302 be used as our sloper for wired for style?
No. So the question was, can we use 1301 or 1302 for Wired for Style? No, because Wired for Style doesn't have princess seams. So what you use your princess seam sloper for is garments with princess seams. And trust me, you're going to recognize more garments have princess seams than you realize to begin with. So the sloper you would use for this one, and this is what we recommended in the class, if you have purchased the Woman's Shirt Makers Express 227 and made the adjustment so that it fits you correctly, you could use that pattern and we'll show you how to change it. Or you can start with your 1201 sloper because it does not have princess seams, it has darts.
Um, Also, the comment was 1201 doesn't have the new guide. Yeah, it's not there.
1201 does not have a new guide yet. So hopefully in the near future, we'll be doing a class on 1201. And we do have plans, but we haven't started yet to redo that guide. So regardless of whether we get a class together right away or not, which I'm hoping we do, we will definitely add to that. Because what we did, these were fine if you were a student, a pattern making student, because the directions in the patterns that we purchased were very minimal and left a lot of people confused, and rightfully so. So we decided, and these list of mistakes that I'm talking about that are most often made, that's what we tried to address as we created these new guides to make it clearer and easier to understand.
I lost my comment.
So, and we had already done it to 1207, which is the knit. That one, the knit fit, once you fit a knit sloper, it's not the same as a woven. So if you were going to take a class, I would take one on woven and one on the knit because it's a different animal altogether with the knit.
I lost my comments, but there was something about measuring the band
Oh, yep, measure it for the cup size. Somebody answered
yes.
that.
No,
Was it a question or a comment?
it was a question, and I can't get comments back.
Okay, Brenda's lost our comments for some reason. So if you ask the question about something to do with the band,
That was Joni. I don't even know if I have
was
comments
Joan?
back. Joni.
Joni.
Also, I think I have them back.
Oh, she got it back.
Yeah. Hold on a second. There.
All right, I'm going to keep going and you'll get a couple and then I'll come back.
This is
Are you
this,
ready?
yes.
Okay.
Did you say you pin fit first, and when you get both shoulders and both side seams, then you baste?
No.
Okay.
Someone asked, did I say you pin fit first and once you get it pin fitted, then you base? No. No, 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 no. Stay with me. You're going to machine base the shoulder seams. Of course, these will be basted together as well. Okay. The shoulder seams and the side seams and your princess seams. You're going to base the machine base large stitches. The first thing you're going to do is take out one shoulder and you're going to pin it. And you're going to work your way through the directions, which is going to go to the next shoulder and then side seams. But once I get that done, I'm going to look and see if I need to correct the shoulder because it could happen. Then you're going to make sure that the princess seams are where they're supposed to be, but that's in the directions as well. But all of this, any corrections are made with pins, and there's no stitching in this once you're done. When you get done, all the stitching is gone and only pins, unless this happens to fit perfect, and it could. So if this happens to fit fine and doesn't need any adjustment, you can leave those stitches in there. So, but it's important to get this correct. And one of the next things on my list is absolutely the biggest mistake people are making when they make a sloper. And God bless them, I don't think they're reading the directions, or maybe it's just not sticking in their head. But when you go to pin these side seams or shoulder seams together, it is not necessary, nor is it normal for the raw edges to go together like they do with a garment. But again, we're so used to sewing garments, when we go to, so let's say this is too big in the waist. So we go to pull that fabric and pin in closer here. By keeping these two edges together, you may have it nice in the front and too tight or too big in the back because you just automatically assume your back and your front are different than the back and the front of anybody else, including your sloper, any pattern. And this is why some of your patterns don't fit. This is why your side seams might shift forward or back, because it's not centered in the middle of your underarm. So this seam needs to go straight under your arm, and it needs to be hanging straight, centered and straight. So that's the key of pinning this as well as fitting it. But it is not necessary nor normal to always have the raw edges together. Sometimes, if you've got a hollow back, you might have an inch sticking out here from the back. You don't need all that fabric. And the same thing the other way, if you're rounded in the front, you may not have as much to pin. You may end up pinning the front and the back together, but the front's a 1/4 inch and the back is 3/4. So this is why you need a sloper, because an average pattern isn't balanced to your body. So what we're trying to do with the sloper is get it balanced to your body. And if your front in one area is bigger than your back, then right now these are made for symmetrical. So if you're not symmetrical, they're not going to end up symmetrical. And the same thing here. People have rounded backs or big shoulders or swimmer's backs. They need more fabric back here. So chances are the back is going to be much lower when you go to pin them together. And you may barely have a seam allowance in the back and have a full 5/8 in the front. And that's okay. We're not going to make a pattern that works that way. We're just trying, we're not worried about anything out here. We're just worried about sculpting this to the shape of your body. Then we're going to make a pattern from that. And it's going to have accurate seam allowances that do have to be flush together. But right now, this pattern is made for somebody else. And I'll tell you who it's made for. It's made for a dress form. It's made for a dress form. They have an hourglass figure. They don't have any irregular shoulder shapes or lumps or bumps or aging issues. So, but we do. So that's why we have to take this basic one and make it fit us. Now, you could take every pattern you ever buy and do all of this in a muslin. Who wants to do that? Not me. So what we want to do is we make this sloper. And then if we want to, I'm showing you, we'll do more classes besides the Wired for Style. I've got a couple of I'm thinking about for the princess theme. So we'll do classes to get you acclimated and understanding how to make those changes and feeling more confident about doing it yourself. So I don't know where I was going with that, but anyway, that's the idea. And then you can take this and put it on top of a commercial pattern. And when you see how easy it is, when you lay that tissue that fits you perfectly, let's say it's a tissue, on top of a paper pattern that doesn't, that's brand new, and you can look at it and you go, oh my goodness, that armscye is way too high. Oh, I'm so glad I have a sloper. Oh, those shoulders are straight and my shoulders are sloped. So glad I have a sloper because you'll just change that pattern right there to match your sloper and then you can sew it up. So you have two options with a sloper. You can use it as a base of a pattern and add to it. And we have lots of classes online, and we've got the best book on the market for pattern making that will walk you through all of those steps. And they're all illustrated and they're all simple steps. It's not like reading paragraphs of information, it's just following directions. Okay, so that is one of the biggies. So remember that. Write that into your brain that these do not have to match and they probably won't. Same with the shoulder. Remember that once you're in the pin fitting stages, you're never going to sew this back together. So don't sew it back together. You're going to pin fit. And after you pin fit, each one of these lines would represent a pin. So I put these pins in here. Then I'm going to take my black Sharpie and I'm going to make a mark on top of each one of those pins. That's my stitching line. So I'm going to do that everywhere I've made any corrections. That's my stitching line. Now I have the base of my pattern. Now I can make a paper pattern out of that. And from each one of those stitching lines that I've created, I go out from there the amount I want my seam allowance. So if it's a side seam, I'm going to go out 5/8. Even though when I pin fit it together, this was a quarter and this one was 3/4. They're going to end up being 5/8 because we're only going to start with the stitching line, which is the way a pattern's made anyway. You start with where you're going to stitch and then you add the seam allowance. We've had to identify where we need to stitch because obviously it's not going to fit us perfect. So now what I tell people is once you've made that pattern, your paper pattern and done all that, if you want to go back to be frugal and save fabric and everything, you could go back and stitch it together now and put it on. But I'd stitch it together, maybe right sides together, so that you could see what it's going to look like. But really, you're going to make a pattern and then make a test of that pattern. So you could do this, or you could just take that new pattern you made, which is a really good idea, because here's what could happen. Nobody's perfect. We all make mistakes. We get confused. So you might not have added the appropriate seam allowance in one place on one piece. And you go to sew it together and it's not fitting right. And you're thinking, what the heck? I did all that she said and it should be fitting. Then you're going to go back to your original where you traced all the lines out and you're going to look and then you're going to realize, oh, I only added 3/8. I was supposed to add 5/8 here. Sew it back together. Excellent. So it's really, you need to test that pattern before you do anything with it, that sloper pattern. Now, once you have the base of the pattern, then it's time to do a sleeve. And we tell you in our pattern guides, do not cut the sleeve out in the beginning. Do not, do not, do not. The reason is that sleeve that's made for that size of a pattern or sloper might not be the sleeve that you need. So don't waste your time and cutting that sleeve out. So before you go to sleeves, this is another big mistake. People will think, oh, I'm done. The sides fit, the shoulders fit. This is great. I'm done. I'm putting a sleeve in. And then it's all bad. The reason is they didn't confirm their stitching line on their armscye was going to end up in the right place. So you want to be able to see visually that that stitching line is going to go down in this hollow spot right here and down and around. And in the back, it's got to go over the shoulder blade and down and around. And you want it to be sitting so that your sleeve is on your arm, and your shirt is not on your arm. You understand what I'm saying? So that seam has to be in a very specific place so that the sleeve will hang right. Because if you have fabric going over here and it's not even, or out in here someplace that you don't need it, and you go and put that sleeve on, it's going to look like the demo. Not going to look nice at all. So make sure as you eyeball this, and that's what I'm here for too, is if you need to contact me, I will look at that in a picture. And I can tell in most pictures, if they're good pictures, oh, you know what? That's too far in or it's too far out. You want to just double check that. So then you're ready for the sleeve. But you're not completely ready for the sleeve because now what you need to do is two measurements. There's a single notch on the front of a sleeve. You're going to measure the stitching line. So here's our stitching line. So you're going to measure along that line up to the seam allowance. From this seam allowance, along this line, up to this seam allowance. Is that what we're doing here? Yes. Okay. There's two ways to do it. Anyways, so we're going to go like that. So if you don't have a curved ruler, stand your tape measure on its edge and measure up there. Measure twice, double check that you're accurate. Okay, then you're going to do the same thing for the back. Now, and your right might be slightly different than the left, so double check that. Then you're going to go to the sleeves. There's a nest of sleeves in the package, and you're going to measure that same distance. So from this seam allowance, all the way up to this notch, because that is the shoulder seam. This is not the shoulder seam, this is. So you're going to measure this seam allowance from that seam allowance to this notch. Make a note of it. Same thing to this notch in the front. Make a note of it. Now you're going to compare those two. And if my armscye in the back is 1/4 to 3/8 inch smaller than my back of my sleeve, that's what we're looking for. It could be exact too. If this was 8.5 and your armscye was 8.5, we could live with that. It doesn't have to have ease. It's nice to have a little bit though. And then the same thing over here. You're going to measure. And if you've got that 1/4 to a 1/8 to 3/8, something in that vicinity, extra in the sleeve to kind of ease in, that's what you need. And remember, your easing goes between the notches. There's no easing under here. The other thing that's important is on the armscye, down here, and that is the front. So let's say this is the front. So down here and here, these should be between the notch and the seam allowance right here, should be the same shape. So you should be able to lay this on top of this and stitch to the notch. They should just be identical or darn near identical. So you might need to reshape your armscye. Another way, if your armscye gets really misshapen, is to take your original armscye pattern piece and lay it right on and reshape your armscye. That's a good way if it gets really out of whack. But you do need to have one more thing, and that is balancing the armscye. The armscye is balanced when the back armscye distance is 1/2 inch longer than the front. And this is imperative for a good fitting garment on anybody, any human being, because I don't know if I have a body here, I don't. Okay, so in the front, the armscye, like we talked about earlier, it dips in. It comes in closer. In the back, it goes around the shoulder. Don't dip in the back, right? So therefore, you know it's longer. It has to be just because of the shape. And if it's not longer and the back is the same size as the front, here's what happens. And you spend all day doing this because it'll keep doing that. Because there's not enough fabric back there, so it just keeps pulling. So if you've got shirts, blouses, or anything that does that, that's chances are it's a garment that was made with a symmetrical armhole. And they're doing a lot of that in ready to wear t-shirts, especially the ones that are souvenir t-shirts. It's easier for the cut and sew house because they just cut out the front and backs are identical, the sleeves are identical, and they sew them together, but they don't fit right. They don't hang right. They're not comfy. So that's why we're doing a custom sloper. So remember that back arm side. If you buy a pattern and the sleeve is cut on the fold, get your money back. That's not even a drafted pattern. That's just some person's idea of slopping it together. No way should you ever cut out a sleeve out of fold. And I know people will write me and say, well, what about with knits? Okay. I'm going to be silly now, but my body doesn't change when I wear a knit. It's still longer in the back and shorter in the front. The arm size still. So knits, wovens, it doesn't matter. You need longer in the back. So there's a part in the book that's going to show you that you need to balance that. Then you also need to balance your side seams. What do I mean by that? Well, once you get done, you're going to lay your front right on top of the back right. And you're going to correct any inconsistency. You see how this is perfectly exactly the same shape? That's what you want. So if the back has a little hiccup or the front has a little hiccup, you're going to just smooth that out and make them identical. Now they're not identical in widths. So you don't want to do anything but lay these side seams together and confirm the straight of the grain. This is key. So when you lay the front on the back to balance those side seams, you make sure that the straight of grain on the front and the straight of grain on the back are parallel. They won't necessarily be on top of each other, but you can measure from one to the other and make sure they're parallel. And then you true up those side seams and that garment will hang beautifully. Okay. Do you have more questions before I go through some more of my list of things not to do?
Do.
All right. And we're doing better with the camera now.
Yeah, seems like it.
The problem was we had the camera in a mode that we do when we're doing demos at the sewing machine, and it only looks at a small area. And we had it still set that way, so it was losing its mind.
Oh, okay. So a couple of people are asking, oops, if they don't have, where to go? Sorry. How do you see the changes you need if you don't have a sewing partner to work with to see if areas you need to change in the sloper?
I'm going to get to that one. That's the
Okay.
next part of so just don't go anywhere. I'm going to
Okay.
get to that.
And
That the question is about doing it by yourself without a partner, and I'll get to that. Okay.
also, someone missed the beginning, but will you be doing an online class for doing a sloper?
Yes, and you can see that in the latest newsletter. If you're not on our newsletter list,
Jillian.
go. She is okay. You can read about it. It starts August 4th or 6th and ends September. I don't know.
Look, I'm not sure.
Yeah, Brenda's gonna look it up for us. Maybe you could put a link to the latest newsletter.
Maybe.
Maybe. If not, we'll put it on there later for you. Okay. Another question?
Um, just go on.
Okay. All right. So another thing that could happen, and it happens mostly with a certain personality and people who like to get things just right. Like sometimes they call them A-type personalities. Well, what I find is they fit it too tight. They get a real good silhouette, but then it's too tight. You've got to remember to leave ease. And don't get it too loose. It's baggy. follow the silhouette of your body. And you don't need to have it snug, but you still want to show a little curve there in your side seam, even if you're not curving as much as you used to. But, uh, but not too loose, not too tight. And then finally, I can't tell you, I had one student several years ago. I can't tell you how many times she started over. It must have been 7, 8 times. But we'd get just about so far with her sloper, and she'd be sending me in for what I was thinking was our final approach to this. And she goes, I decided to start over, and I'm using a different pattern now. And I'm like, what? So, no, if you get, maybe you might want to start over once if you make a lot of mistakes. You might. I know I did in the beginning. And you end up with too many marks everywhere and you're not quite sure. You may want to start over, but don't fall into the trap of, I just have to start over. I have to start over. Don't start over too many times because you're never going to wear this anywhere. So it doesn't matter what it looks like. What matters is that we find the best fit for you and create that pattern. And there's lots more in the book that will tell you about how to create the pattern, how to preserve the pattern, and how to never, ever, ever use your master sloper pattern. You trace it, but don't use it to sew with. The problem will be, I know this one firsthand, it happened to me not that long ago. I got excited and I was using my sloper for my camp shirt and I wanted to do that kind of a full fluttery sleeve with a lot of gather up here. So I pulled that sleeve out and I sliced it and I spread it all out and I made my sleeve and never thought another thing about it till I needed to use my sloper again for this. And I pull out that no sleeve, no sleeve. What happened to my sleeve? Oh my gosh, I can't believe I did what I tell everybody else not to do. So don't do it. Maybe even put some big note on it to remind yourself not to do that so that you can just always trace it out. And then eventually you may want to put it on tag board. Let's see, I got one here. And tag board is a great concept for patterns, but tag board is not a pattern that you cut around the tag board. You actually chalk around it, and then you're cutting on the chalk lines. So, but it's a great way to preserve it because this stuff isn't going to deteriorate or fall apart anytime soon, like maybe a paper would. All right, now before I get into the alone of it all, do you have any more questions?
Mm, There was one going back to cup size.
There's another one about cup size. I don't
Yeah,
know
sir.
what to tell them other
Um,
than
Okay. Wait a minute. When measuring for cup size, do you compare your full bust to the band or upper bust?
it's always the full bust. The full bust creates the cup size. Up here doesn't have anything to do with it. It would if you were making a bra, but we're not making a bra. So all we want to know is your cup size so you get the right pattern if you're getting 1301. 1302 does not require cup sizes. 1301 does. And it's only, so just two ranges anyway. There's A to double D, and then there's
Double
like
D to
triple
I.
D to I.
Yeah, and then one
Yeah.
X.
So it's just two ranges. It doesn't have to be so if you don't know if you're a B or a C, it doesn't matter because it's going to be the same pattern all the way up to a D. So
Okay,
if you're
that's
anywhere in
it
that
for me.
range, that's all you need to know.
That's it for now.
Okay, so then I had this email come in yesterday from Julie. With tomorrow's Tuesdays at 2 about slopers, I have a bit of a dilemma that you may want to address with possible solutions. I would love to sew more clothing. However, I am a widow on a fixed income and living alone. I have no sewing buddy and cannot afford a ditto for. Do you have any suggestions as to how I might be able to successfully create a sloper by myself? Thanks as always for so freely sharing your extensive knowledge. Julie. Okay, Julie. I've had to do a few things without a sewing buddy myself. And you don't need a sewer as much as you do need a little help because you cannot see under your arm accurately without doing this, and then it's changing things. You can't see the back. You can't see the top of your shoulders to make sure that those seams are right straight on top of your shoulder. So there are things like that that you need help with. But it doesn't mean that other person has to know anything else other than how to use a camera. So you tell them, stand erect without twisting or anything, and take a picture in the back. You can even have them take a picture in the front because you know what? You see things in pictures you don't see in the mirror. And then you want to make sure those shoulder seams, you have them take a picture. Have them take a picture. You just slightly move your arm out of the way, have them take a picture of the side seam. And then you can adjust from that. You're going to need their help again. So, you can't ask somebody that's only going to come over once, but I really think you can do it. Now, I did my whole rounded back adjustment that way. I had my grandchildren take the picture, and then I made it. It wasn't as fast, but I made an adjustment. I had to take another picture. I probably had to make 2 or 3 adjustments, but then I got it right. So that's my best suggestion if you don't have a person who knows how to sew that can help you. But now the pinning, you're going to have somebody, or the only thing else you could do is you've got it on the stitching line. If it's not correct, you could try to ascertain, take it off, and reshape it. But you're going to do much better with a support buddy of some kind. Now, another suggestion, I don't know where you live, Julie, but there are American Sewing Guild chapters all over the country. And you might just look them up and find out if there's someone in that group that lives near to you that you could partner up with. I want to make a sloper. I think it's a great idea for fitting. If anybody in your group would like to make a sloper, I need a buddy. And go to one meeting or something. That might be a suggestion. You may find somebody in your neighborhood or another group that you're involved in that sews that would be willing to do that. I'm a good one for approaching them. Hey, you know what? I found out this really cool new thing. Make a sloper and get better fitting. Oh yeah, that sounds great. You want to do it? We could do it together. So I think those are my best suggestions. The camera will help, but the pinning part is going to be difficult to do on your own body. It just really is. So that's my best hope for doing it alone. Uh, and certainly I have support packages that you can work with me, but again, I can't be there physically to pin it for you. I can look at the pictures and tell you what you need to do next. But that's the best I can do for you, Julie. I hope you find a solution, and if you do, please let us know because we would love to hear that. Because I think making a sloper is going to change everyone's sewing experience. Once you learn and understand the fitting of a sloper, it expands your sewing work, expands your whole education on sewing. And how many of us have waters? All of us have made waters where we sewed it and we prayed and we hoped and we crossed our fingers. It's going to fit. We put it on. It was god awful. It wasn't even worth fixing. We just wadded it up and threw it away. I don't want to make any more waters, and I'm sure you don't either. It's okay when you're first learning, you chalk it off to experience. But if you didn't learn anything from it, it's not an experience, right? So, or at least not a good one. So, I will take any more questions, but remember, we have the woven bodice fitting support. And you can read about that online. And we also have the critique instructions. This will show you how to critique, how to, get yourself prepared, where it remind you of some of the things I talked about here. And we have a woven bodice kit. Now, there's two two versions of the kit. They are not the kit that comes with the sloper class, because you don't need as much for the sloper class. So for the sloper class, we just have the paper, the fabric, and the pattern that you're going to use. These kits are more elaborate. They're going to have a video from Connie Crawford on some of the details and how to do it. And there's two different ones. One, you get 3 patterns and 6 yards of paper. The other, you get 1 pattern and 3 yards of paper. And both of them come with muslin. So there's lots of options. And if you're taking the class, you can just get the class kit. Same thing with the knit sloper. We've got fitting support. We've got 2 fitting supports. I didn't put up the
Oops.
critique, and we also have a kit. So lots of options. And when you do a knit sloper, nobody asked about knit slopers. When you do a knit sloper, use a rayon jersey or a poly jersey. Don't use a cotton. Cotton is notorious for not always having the good memory. It doesn't always recover, and you want it to recover perfectly. You don't want it just, I mean, sometimes cotton just gets a little bit bigger. You're wearing it, you don't even notice it. Maybe it's a little more ease. But when you're trying to make a sloper, it's extremely important that it has that recovery and about a 40 to 50% stretch. Okay, and then just remember that I'm always available, except for next week, to answer your questions by email. We try to help you. I will be on vacation next week, and there'll be abbreviated hours that Brenda will be here, but she will be able to obviously keep an eye on the email. So if you have a pressing question, something important, you'll be able to reach us. But anyways, the rest of the time I'm here, I answer the questions, sometimes even on the weekends. I see a question, I'll sit down for 5 minutes and answer that question. And so that you can keep going. Because I know when somebody writes me a question on a Saturday, you don't want to wait till Monday. But I can't always do that. I try. Okay, so just remember, no alterations, no wire hangers. Do not start with anything but the basic pattern. Machine base. Then we're going to pin. All right. Well, that's it for slopers today. If you have any other questions that we didn't address today, please just send me an email. Our email, as always, is islandersewing@comcast.net. Website is islandersewing.com. And we've got lots of really great video classes other than slopers. So take a look at our class section as well. Let me know if you have any questions. And I hope you have a beautiful 4th of July. God bless America. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Oops. I don't know what I'm doing here. Hold on.